A few more cookie seekers. Comfortable. After I introduce Leah, I'm going to sneak back and, as quietly as I can, slide most of that big giant open door closed because we've got the squeaky banging entrance door going. But some of our students sometimes have to duck out a little early to get to their next class. It starts at an odd time, or to get to work, or pick up their kids. So if you are one of those people who needs to leave a little early, I'll leave a gap and then just try to ooze through as quietly as you can. And we always warn the author, which I forgot to mention on our drive in today, that people leaving doesn't mean we don't love you, because there's just so much that people are juggling. Well, I'm delighted not only to have this particular author, but for the first reading of the year, have the author we originally planned to have. Leah, tried and true. I knew she'd be here. I knew it would all work out.
Very loyal.
Yes, she's loyal, she's professional, and she's fun to be with. So we have, as previously announced, Leah Umansky, finally learning the correct pronunciation, who has zipped up from New York City to share some work from her most recent collection, The Barbarous Century, from Eyewear Publishing in the United Kingdom. And we had a fun talk this morning with my poetry class about, why did you publish it in the UK? Well, why not? Words are words. Yeah. But it's not her first book. She has fascination with kind of dystopia. We were talking about that in the class also. So she has a dystopian-themed collection called Straight Away, The Empty World, which is a chapbook, which is the most recent before this one. And then working backwards in time, another chapbook inspired by the television series Mad Men called Dom Dreams and I Dream. The very first book was her Domestic Uncertainties from Blazevox, which is out in Rochester, right? Yeah. So harvesting all the glories of the small press world and the richness in that small press world right now, among other things that we've enjoyed is, well, if it has long lines and it won't fit, we'll just do it sideways, Well, you don't need to chop your poem up just to fit it the way you think it's supposed to be. There are many things that are unique about Leah's work that I adore. There's an incredibly strong voice. Like, you meet this accommodating, friendly person, and then the voice just comes out in this really serious, focused, I'm not just gonna, tickle you in the armpits and we're all gonna giggle and go on with, no, it is serious what's going on. So it made sense to me that as time passed, the very richly personal work that she'd been writing also became more and more political because of what's around us right now. And I knew one way or another it would be great to have a very political writer right after the election, whether we were mourning or celebrating or just breathing a sigh of relief. But it's not always obvious how it's political. There's nothing pedantic about it. The right answer is, vote fill in the blank. So you have to watch for it. Likewise with the personal, it doesn't feel like confessional poetry. So you'll really kind of enjoy watching where you feel yourself inserting easily into the poems and where you feel it resisting a little, and then suddenly you go, oh, now I get it. Now I get the place I intersect with this particular poem. My students begged to hear some Game of Thrones poems, so I know we'll be hearing some of those. And then there's, what's the other TV show you're thinking about writing about?
The Westworld poem?
The Westworld poem, yeah. So the whole issue of pop culture in poetry is one that has always fascinated me. So she'll read for about 45 minutes and then take questions. So, do the little mental blackboard thing if you're curious about things as she's reading, so that you can ask afterwards and hear a little more about the life of the writer, the decisions writers make, the poems themselves. So thank you for coming so far, Leah. Here you go.
Thank you, Nancy. That's such a nice introduction. Hi, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah? Ready to be closer, or it's good? It's good? Okay. Thumbs up. Thank you. I appreciate it. So, yeah, The Barber Century is my new collection. It came out in April. And it's barbarous for many different reasons. I always say that part of it is about being a single woman in the 21st century and what fun that is. And that's sarcasm. And because it's not fun. Sometimes it's fun, but not all the time. Most of the time it's not. Also, just like Nancy was alluding to, really just this political climate we're living in. And so there are poems in here from both my chapbooks, the Madman poems, there's dystopian poems. And it's also very much a book about, and I kind of mentioned this in Nancy's class this morning, about like how you navigate these dark times. And a lot of that for me is through story and through art and through being inspired, and that's where a lot of these poems come from. So, with that being said, I think I'm going to start with the Sestina, because we talked about it in Nancy's class this morning, and it's one of those poems that's sideways, so it's always awkward to kind of read in public, so bear with me. I don't write a lot in form, and this is one of the few poems that are in form, and you'll hear the repetition of the end words. They're lie, raise, man, ready, stand, and best. And what's fun about when I write in form, I think, is that I often kind of strange up those words and use them in different ways. So this is called Sestina. The time is naturally over. It is another morning. Lie still, but declare the carpet of marigolds at your tongue yours. Raise your lips to the flock of sunlight at your door and tell yourself to man up. There is no morning now. Another day is another brilliant, readied start. Another delicate storm of possible. Stand straight. Look away from the blinding. It is best taken with the whirling steam of night. I can't remember the last time I thought it best to stand so completely honest with the world, with myself. We lie. It is so easy to lie, but I know that even lies have colors and they stand out against the dark. How can there be a living gem inside me when I cannot raise another hope to the sky, another winged account of song and shade and readiness? I ready my wild. It is a fiery double, but I do it before the skies and the sea, before man. I said I was falling apart. I said in a stern voice and with a whopping fear, man, I'm falling apart. But it was not so. All was gone in the flowering of what is best. All was gone as if a great thinning flattened all of the worst feelings into a ready furling, the way joy can be defensive, the way fire can be tinkered into flame. Here's a lie. I can handle my emotions. It is ruining me. I sing myself the cadence of tongues raised high in song, in might, in glory, glory, glory. To come to the whirl of calm, one must stand aside. One must jump from the fear and see the circling below. Spiral the hurt, stand back, and rise at the way the sound of your heart blossoms. Manage the way a bond is unbreakable, till 1,000 flowers raise their heads to you in scent. Send the rising in your throat away and swat it. Best, what I like best is how the way you need is never destroyed. The way all those who lie know the fright within their city. Their bodies green, yellow, and red. You could bring yourself to a standstill if you choose, but red almost always means stop, means rest, means stand back and breathe. I might cover myself in flight, or sky, or clover, all to lie myself into believing that I am stronger than my stresses. I tell myself, man up. I tell myself nature is more than glorious, and I feed myself the best choices, the best meats and berries. Look, raise a glass, raise two. Why don't we just raise the whole damn bottle of red? Some of us might say what we feel is best. Some of us might inspire other elements to action, but I stand alone, and it is not evolutionary. It is barely manageable. It is practically a lie, but one worth telling. I embolden this lie I raise to my lips. I salute the readiness of myself, and I manipulate the rest. for the joy of no longer standing alone, that bold sprig is best left to blossom. So that's a long one, so you can see the seriousness that Nancy's talking about there. My poems are pretty serious, even the pop culture ones. So, this next one is called Hinge, and this is a little bit more political. So I was talking to Nancy's class this morning, and I was saying that right before the book went to print, I was starting to write some new political poems. And I kind of threw them in at the last minute, and they add sort of a whole new layer to the manuscript, and I felt that it made it a lot stronger. So this is one of those poems. Hinge. Hinge the tale, hinge the hero. This will be the device. No fears will haunt. You must. The locality, the vision. I'm telling you too many secrets, but in every light look. Under all the tempers, sparks. How will I know what it will be like? A rune, a think, a crux, more than a response for this current hour. To what edge can we cling? This has affected me. This pause is alive. What flame, what skeleton? Here's the last line. Like a hum and a hero, a girl musting, a girl wanting is pierced with desire and fury. Something is percolating, like landing, like storm, like need, like rumor, like plunge, like survival, like seas, like healing, like healing, like healing. Wrong, 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 wrong. In all of us, a catastrophe of one. This next poem is called Turning Over Phrases, and it's a prose poem in 3 sections. They're not numbered. And it's very much kind of about selling, if you will, which kind of lends itself to Mad Men, but it's also about sort of the selling of the self. Listen and listen good. I clicked add to spell check when I saw that your name turned red. I blushed and thought, how romantic, how very 21st century. That's the beauty of this felt time. I can spuddle with what I deem romantic, tug it, tweak it, and tune it till it's just right. Each digital act is darged by a display of affection or gratitude, attitude, or charm. There's a bit of me here, between bone and heart bone, a bit muffled, but still plush. It has been too long, too gone, since I felt this kench, an interior vetching here beneath the breast. I'm looking at the digital for something heartfelt, something coded, heart, something worth sharing, something worthy of an investment. But then again, I'm a salesman, my father's daughter. My words a financial gesture between myself and my word bank. I am selling you an aesthetic experience. I touch type. And a word is now for swunk and for swinkles. I am so endearing, so enduring. Can't you see I'm being genuine? This is potentially profitable. Don't you want to cash in? The heart is a loaded weapon. Did I say weapon? I meant investment. Sometimes I'm fun. It's usually pretty serious. So this is a poem called Doing, this next one, and it's 4 sections, and it's inspired by a Toni Morrison article I read in The Guardian. And it's also one of the few poems I have that was also kind of inspired by teaching. So I teach middle school and high school English for people who don't know. And I very rarely write about students, and kids are always asking me, like, oh, are you writing poems about us? And I'm like, no. But I maybe have like 3, but this is one of the only ones in this book. And it's just the first section. Doing. 1. There is no word for the opposite of feminism, I tell a student. 2. Toni Morrison said in an article in The Guardian that as citizens, we are always told by the press, so-and-so tried. And she notes that no one does anymore. I do. I don't know where I'd head, but I've known yearning, and this off-season needs to end. I will not be what is left over. I will be the dirty work, the hopeless grind, and the sweet heaven. I will scrawl these whispers into walls. Speak to me. I am doing this. 3. I'm urging myself to express more frustration. I felt that this was a strange stream spraying. I felt this was nothing to get hysterical over, but still, a situation that needed voice. We always need voice. Nothing is picture perfect, and if that means we bring the pace to a stop, so be it. I am urging myself to be less meticulous, less focused, to take what is given to me and to take what I need. Still, do men have such thoughts? No, because there is no word for their struggles. 4. I am a bringer. I bring to the table, I bring to my life and to yours. I beg at the true mystery of life and wonder if it is just a little stifled voice. Let me put it another way. We all want to step out into a day and know we are good, that we try our best at all times. This next poem is called Translation, and it's inspired by something my friend Emily said, and also by what's the name of the book? Andrew Sean Greer, who just won the Pulitzer last year for his book Less, or this year, 2018. His previous book before that is called, I'm gonna get it wrong, something like The Many Lives of Greta Wells, or The Something Lives of, I can't remember, but I loved it, it's great, and so it also inspired this book. He's one of my favorite writers. Translation. Abruptly, something spruced in me. In the blood of my fist, in the blood of my eye, something whispered inside, don't be afraid. It was a small day, it was a small way to see the dust storm within, to see the way I inhaled the odor of what bred inside. There is what you do and what you don't do. There is the heart you are given and the heart you follow. Mine is great and big and full. What else is there to follow? The breaking was first, the wild shoot stalking up within me, the squeaky rung of my breath. I didn't feel the desire then. I couldn't translate my fear into action, so it tumbled out of me. Fate taunted with a metal-tipped tongue, I learned. I am ensnared in my own history. I am one woman in this awful world. I look at all the wooded fears of me, the lowland sons of me, and the dark sparked dreams. All the nimble scraps of hope, I feed myself, I stop, I listen. We live many lives, a friend tells me. I stop being afraid. I need to bring something fixed and fragrant into this uncertainty. I need to flame back the tatters of dreams past. I need to prove to myself that I could live the life I want, despite darkness, despite doubt, despite fear, and despite my sex. I am so tired of wondering when and how. I am so tired of limping through this world alone. I will build my life with song and language. I'm doing it now with hope and dreams, blessings and reprieves, all the good ways I hold myself captive to myself. They will outweigh what is struck down and riddled in ash. The phoenix relights its own fire. I am lighting my spark with heart. So yeah, that's pretty serious. All right, let's lighten things up. So let's move to Game of Thrones. I made a promise. So yeah, I'm pretty much a super fan of Game of Thrones. My 8th graders this week recently found, like, someone decided to Google me in class, which was pretty funny. And this girl was like, oh my God, you're on the internet. And I'm like, yeah, I know. And she was like, you have like a whole corner on the internet on Google. And I said, well, yeah, I have some books that have been published. She's like, you have a website. I'm like, I made that website. She's like, wait, there's an About Me section. And you know, it's like right at the beginning of class. And I'm like, oh God, like this is gonna go the whole period. I'm being too nice here. And she started reading my bio that I wrote on my website. She's like, a Game of Thrones super fan. I'm like, okay, let's move on. So it's kind of funny. So yeah, I'm really excited for this final season, even though I'm mad it's the final season. But I went to Winterfell this summer in Ireland, and that like made my life. And it's really not what it looks like on TV. It's like all CGI, which broke my heart, broke my mom's heart, like it broke everyone's heart. We were like so upset. So spoiler alert, it doesn't look like that. So this first poem is called I Want to Be Stark-Like, and it's obviously inspired by the Starks, but it's especially inspired by Ned Stark. And I was talking to Nancy's class about that this morning. For me, Ned Stark really represents what a good man should be like, even though, you know, he doesn't make it that far. Spoiler alert. He was such a good father and a good husband and a good man in this world that if you watch the show, you know it's like utter chaos all the time. So when I started watching the show, I started pausing it on HBO On Demand and like writing notes. And one of the first things I wrote was I want to be Stark-like. I was like, what the hell am I doing? And then when I sat down that week to write, I looked at my phone and I wrote the first Game of Thrones poem. So never did I think I'd be writing a poem about Game of Thrones. And then I wrote many. So this is I Want to Be Stark-Like. A man is only worth what people say he is, and those Starks are good stock. They'll knee-deep it. They famish the craving they are fathered by, manning the forestry of life, they are steadfast and sturdy. When pungent or cruel, they sauce the ache. Light folds them in two. What I want to say is, I would meet you upon this. Let me too carry the token of the world. Tell me the secret of what comes next, and then take me, river, river, river. Then I was debating between Khaleesi and Tyrion. I think I'm going to go with Tyrion because apparently Tyrion lives in Brooklyn. And, well, Tyrion, Peter Dinklage. And my friend said that he was behind her voting yesterday, which made me really happy. So, I would have died. I don't know what I would have done. But, so this is, Tyrion says, I wish I was the monster you thought I was, Tyrion says, and I think how we all return to our places. You can see the god's clutch as he waits for a low sky, for a corner of hope. I've been on trial my whole life, he says, and nails the iron tip on the tooth. A sleeping evil, though dumb on night, is still an evil, but Tyrion is no heathen, though he is slight. He says, I wish I had killed him, but even the dark has its blossoms, and his are green-tipped and tart. This is the law of the land, my friend, of fathers, of men, of words. The saw cuts through an ugly thing. Blood is ugly but pure. Blood clots, blood congeals, blood reveals, doesn't it? I saved you all from a monster, he says. And he did, but that's another matter. Tyrion is another kind of monster, a kinder monster. This one is sore-footed, this one is lion-hearted, this one is high-watered and good. I want to say this will soon be a time long ago, so play on, dwarf, liege, Lannister. It's funny how now we like the Lannisters, or at least some of them. Like Jaime, who, you know. He's gonna do good this season, I'm telling you. I have a feeling. Okay, so I think maybe I'll read a couple more in here, then I'm gonna read some new poems. So this poem is called Contemporary History, and it was inspired by this really awesome Emily Dickinson exhibit at the Morgan Library down in Manhattan. Right now they're having this amazing Frankenstein exhibit that I really want to go to, and then there's a Tolkien exhibit coming in January, which I'm so excited about, because I teach The Hobbit, and I can't wait. It's one of my favorite, it's like a little gem in the city, that library, that museum. So this is inspired by that exhibit. It was all like letters and journals, and then all these pressed flowers. It was this whole, has anyone seen it? It was like amazing. I think some of it might be online too. 1. At the Emily Dickinson exhibit at the Morgan, I look at Emily's digital book of pressed flowers. I'm impressed at her range, at her care, at her attention. All her parts are intact, leaves, stigmas, and stamens. It is a beautiful thing, her art, and her flaunting of nature, but those specimens are trapped. My friend says, goes to show you how much time women had on their hands back then. And I laugh, but it isn't funny. Even I know time is both pleasure and curse. 2. What more could Emily have done? What more could have been of her life? How have I kept my life intact? What about my pressings? 3. Later at dinner, I fill my friend in about my dating life. I layer my delight with pepperings of despair, my dangers in waiting, my distaste for games, my unwillingness to follow time and enjoy the present. I say it is hard for me because it is hard for me. I can't pretend otherwise. These are my crosshairs and my skippings. My overflooding cannot be damned. And what of my indulgent worrying that I can't disturb or shove off? I talk about expectations, what I want, favor, and rely on. I think about what my sister says about my going from 0 to 10, how I'm so ready to fall in love, I'm already there. How can that be wrong? My friend says expectations are good. She says it boils down to the mothers. They raise their sons to be princes when they should really be raising them to be kings. Insightful stuff there. All right, so I'm gonna read this political poem and then I'll move on to more political poems. So this is a poem called Stranger Is in American Life. And it was originally published online in a journal called Glass Poetry, which is one of my favorites. It's really great. If you don't know it, check it out. They have this great midterm election issue that just came out yesterday, and it's awesome. Stranger is an American life. Stranger is that it might have been yesterday, but here we are, and it is astonishing. The hidden and the rejected fall off. The chaotic first, the exiled words, the discovery of lie upon lie. Don't let them. Don't let them forget to say their name aloud. Remember, this volume of our future is overwhelmed by what is vivid. This sensory overload is fashioned in the air, thick with blossom and ripe with insult. Exhale. There is so much in this to adore. The coming together, the discussion, the ardent resistance, and the next generation conspiring, reevaluating, flowering. Don't forget the horror, the unrelenting slog, the brain noise, the steeping must of hate, the mulling over of falsehoods. It is too much to keep to oneself. I have hopes here, still unquelled. Within our bodies inside is another inside, and another inside, and another inside that, like a procession of thrones. Peel back the gilded. Be kind to yourself, but notice the shifting of hands. Think about how things are casted, the tangible things. Those that used to be casted by hands are now spun in lies. I'm disappointed in my country's dreams, in my countless dreams, and in my country of dreams. I am most disappointed in my own inability to see. I keep saying to myself, darkness doesn't hold and it won't, so don't close. Think, beacon, reckon, rage, and then fathom the unthinkable. This is not a country that stops. So that's the barbarous century, or some of it. So what I'm working on now, my current manuscript is called Of Tyrants. And never did I ever think I'd be writing so many political poems, but I just can't stop. And in one hand, I'm really grateful that I'm even getting it out of me, because otherwise I would just be really angry and full of rage. And so these poems are angry and full of rage, but I'm getting them out of me, and it's moving in a little bit of a different direction now. So I'm going to read mostly new ones now, so we'll see how they go. This is called Burn. So this is what it is like to live in the dark, where hate is the only fuel to light the darkness which darkens its dark with hate, the darkness which is darkening now. It is unbearable to not see the way it jags its mouth, spitting its tar. No starry night, no beacon of light, no, no, no. This pin is stuck in the root of my hope. This storm of coal blacks out the sun. This seed of hate shreds the radiant, shreds the joy. This is what hatred is. It's greed seething for us all. This one's kind of inspired by the Scarlet Letter. This isn't a witch hunt. This isn't a witch hunt, yet he draws the letter A on his forehead. He carves A into his latte. He writes A in the steam of his mirror. His swerve in the road, A. His pendulum swings in A. The witch hunt is in the way he pisses away this country. He pisses away the fantasy of freedom, the fantasy of hope, and the fantasy of equality. He eats his A's in the morning. He spits his A's in his speech. His lens, his tackle, his reveal, it is all floodlit by his glory. He should be left to his own devices. He should be left to his own transcendence, delusions. The only witch hunt is in the way he pins us all against one another, the way he hangs the evil on the stars, the way he lights the night in horror, the way he teams the people with lies. His A is not earned. His red is the red of anger, is the red of a man stealing the pride of others. Yes, his red is in the pleasure of seeing what is long lost and piercing it straight through. His A is a transaction. We must hang his lies. Maybe a couple more. I'm going to end on love, just so you know. It's not going to be this dark. I will give you hope. This is called Butcher. It's another new one. Pretty intense title. Butcher. Butchering the tyrants is just a stand-in for the butchering of hate, for the butchering of giants, for the butchering of exaggeration, for the butchering of lies, for the butchering of grandeur, for the butchering of a bragger, for the butchering of absurdity. Butchering the tyrant is just a stand-in for the heel of our humanity, for the way we fall, for the way we thrive, for the way we need, for the way we crawl, for the way we desire, for the way we search. Wonder at the vows, wonder at the leathery skin, wonder at the grit of the eye, wonder at the scale of the giant spleen, wonder at the stab of tongue, wonder at the mass of the bestiality, wonder at the scale of fingers, wonder at the appendix of his hate, wonder at the alternate reality, wonder at the jaws of deception, wonder at what hunt, will, and snare, wonder at what he will have us do next. This is called Satisfied. Diane asks me why I need to have another goal, why I need to have another dream, why I need to have another direction, why I already have a next focus, why I already have another timeline. Why can't you enjoy it? Why can't you just revel in it? How do I even stand still? How do I stop looking? How do I stop careening? How do I stop scrolling? How do I stop trying? How do I stop forcing? How do I stop craning? How? Maybe that's what I love about the water. The cycle of tide, its smooth and its roundings, its cycle of sound, its cycle of light, the way the start and the end are the same. When you think about it, so are ours. We are brought into this life and we are taken out of this life. It's all the moments in between that are the questions. Those are difficult for me. I think about choice. Everything we do is a choice. It's something I think about a lot. And I don't mean just as a writer, not even as a woman, but as a person in this world. Jen tells me to be myself. She says, Leah, you can't question your feeling. And she's right. Later she tells me, you're the only person I know who overthinks their own overthinking. And it's not because they think too much, but it's because of my feeling. Lately, I've been feeling such a spooling of possible, such a linking and unlinking of desire, a buttoning and unbuttoning, a slow pause at the push of the round plastic through its creviced mouth. It has been scaring the shit out of me. These are the worst years I've ever encountered, and I've been walking in a stream of thrill, every ounce of me alive and wanting. I am glad to overcome the rage of this year. I am glad to smack it with my body, which feels so colored in touch, blued in wonder, and violeted in lust. Jen says the universe is not random, and I believe her. But what if this is how it's supposed to be? What if I need to trust myself more? What if I need to be true to myself and run with it, blushing myself into each and every step? I sing songs to my cat, mostly small nothings about his green eyes or his little white locket of hair on his chest. He crawls up on me, passing his face across my face, and I know there is so much of this world we haven't really uncovered yet. I sing him little songs about his stripes. I make up words, singing high and then low. Sometimes I whisper into his ear, someday we'll be able to communicate, though I know we already are. I want someone like me to sing to me, whispering in my ear. Is that weird? I don't think so. Aren't we supposed to be what we want in this world? This is the age of using. My using feels fair and reciprocated, so I tell myself it's okay. This is the world now. What is being in this world without feeling? What else moves us? What else stops us in our tracks? What I want more than anything is to be stopped. Maybe that's what my friend was saying. Stop and enjoy the life you've made. Even if it isn't all you want it to be yet, will it ever be? Will it ever come close? What is close? What is close enough? All right, maybe one more? All right. So this is ending on love. Woman alive. And then I suddenly said, it's good to be alive, and I meant it, not in the way of the reckless, but in the way a band is lifted and then wrecked. I said, it's good to be alive because it is good, and in this offering of myself to you, I am doused in the familiar, something warm and soothing. It is merely caricature to mention fainting or smelling salts or worse, hyperbole. I am currently feeling so much more than the current state of this horrible world. It is good to be alive because I feel the coming of the tides, because I feel the frill and the spray and the shortening and widening of shores with each of my openings. If the sharp claws of the tyrant find their way to my temple, I am already gone, in a pulse of beauty, a stir of honesty, a dance of both lap and lip and bottom. I am orchestrating this living, sharpening myself into the ambient. If the giant fangs of the tyrant find the path to my throat, I am already infecting him with my truth. That I am ready to fall, that I've already fallen, that the falling was a leap I welcomed, and the only time I felt most like myself. That the melancholy has passed, that the gray seawater I have been treading has sea foamed and natured itself into something fresh, and pulsing with organisms. It is good to be alive under the tyrant, for he highlights how we should love, how we can make our own rules, how to remember that life can still surprise us if we open ourselves to risk, if we oyster our way out of hate and rage and stupor, haphazardly and sideways, swollen and curled with our pride, with our pain, with our wants, and muscle ourselves into willing. For the only thing stronger than the tyrant is the heart. Thank you. You want me to stay up here?
Yeah. I mean, you can walk around.
Okay.
I think the acoustics are pretty good in here.
All right.
Questions?
So I noticed that your book, you have a lot of your work tabbed. But when you do your readings, how do you decide what you're going to read that day? Do you kind of like read the audience, or is it something you predetermine?
Yeah, everything that I have tabbed here I didn't read, that's for sure. Well, and also, yeah, you do sort of feel, you know, the audience and what they're responding to. I knew I wanted to end on something that was like love or hopeful rather than something dark, which is so much of what the new work is. So yeah, a lot of it is planned beforehand, and then I go in order. Like, I'm always really envious of people that read and like, you know, they flip around all over the book, so they'll read from the beginning, then they go to the end, and they go back, and like, I think that just takes a lot of planning, and I've never done that. And that's usually like you have a separate piece of paper, I think, and you like number your pages, and you're like, oh, page 3, then page 10, then page 2. So I don't really do all that, but I knew I kind of wanted the TV poems sort of in the middle, and then I knew that I would go to some of the new poems. Bless you. So yeah, it was definitely planned before. A lot of it was also inspired by meeting with Nancy's class this morning. So yeah. Does that answer your question? Good.
So can you describe your process? How often you write, and where the inspiration comes from? We know the inspiration comes from. Yeah.
Yeah. So I spoke about this morning also. I really only sit down to write maybe once or twice a week at most. And when I do sit down to write, I usually sit down and write a couple poems. Not that all of them are good or any of them are good, but I never really walk away with just one poem. It could be because I don't write every day, so I kind of force myself to do that. I think it's also that sometimes when I'm writing, like, other ideas come in, and it's easier for me to like open up other Word documents and like write that down, and then open another one and write that down. And then I'll either go to those other pages that are open, or I'll go to them like the following week. Sometimes I don't go to them at all, then I end up deleting them, and then that's it. But a lot of times it's like little notes I have on my phone, or it could be notes in my notebook. Like I was telling Nancy's class that whenever I go to readings, I bring my notebook, and if someone says something that inspires something, I write it down. Whenever I go to museums, I bring my notebook. Like, I'm always writing things down. Not that they always enter poems, but sometimes they do. Lately, I've been having a lot of friends in my poems, which is really interesting. I guess I'm just surrounding myself with really smart people that are saying things that have been inspiring me. So sometimes, like, I'll make a note on my phone, like, oh, Diane said this to me at lunch, and that was really interesting. And then I'll sit down to write, and I'll look at what I have on my phone and be like, oh, I wonder if that will spark something. Then I'll sit down and try to write something. So like that poem Satisfied, like I just wrote a couple weeks ago when, well, you know Diane. Diane came into town. So yeah, that was fun. Other time, like I was telling Nancy's class, like, people think I watch all this TV, and like I really don't. Like, I love TV, but I don't watch all this TV. There's maybe like 4 or 5 shows I love. And there have been times like on Twitter where people are like, oh, are you watching, I don't know, like what, like Justified? And I'm like, no. They're like, you should write poems about Justified. And I'm like, I have 0 interest in watching Justified. Like, oh, you should try it. But like, it doesn't work that way. So like, I love Mr. Robot, which I was telling Nancy's class, and the new season's coming out soon. It's the last season. I love it. I took all these notes down, and then I sat down, and none of them sparked anything. And I'm like, all right, like, that's it. It's not going to happen. But then, like, with Westworld, it did happen. So, like, I have a bunch of Westworld poems that I've written. And that, again, just came from notes. So sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. But I will say that when I sit down to write, I don't, it's really bad saying this, I said this last night, I don't go back and edit that much. So usually when I sit down to write is usually what the finished result is. Like, if I make edits, they're usually not that major, which I guess is just lucky. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what my poems would be like if I spent like days or years editing them. I have no idea. I can't even imagine. So. Yeah.
So you're composing poetry through keyboard.
I know, it's another thing I really hate about myself.
No. I think it's gonna be generational.
Well, so I don't really have the best handwriting, and I do depending on what pen I use, which, you know, as a teacher, like a pen is so important. You have to find what pen works for you. So like so many of my poems are all across the page, especially like in my first book, which is literally a square. So I've had so many friends that say, oh, like I imagine you have this like huge like notebook and you just like sprawl out against the margins because so many of my poems use the whole page. I'm like, wow, that'd be like so artistic, but no, I don't do that. And I think because I'm such a fast typist, it's just so much easier for me to type. So it's just what happens. And it's just, I don't even, like I was telling your class this morning, like about sound, like I don't even think really much about the placement. It's kind of just like when I'm writing, if I feel like something needs to be in the right side, I'm just tabbing it over. So it's all kind of, I guess, instinctual. But yeah, everything is pretty much typed. Not notes. I mean, some notes are on my phone, but other notes are in like my notebook. But I never write like a whole poem in a notebook. Like that's really hard for me to do. Like free writing, like I need to be on the computer. That's hard. Yeah.
Was there a defining moment when you knew you were going to be a writer?
Oh, we talked about that this morning also. Good
I
question.
know.
I know, it's like crazy. So there's two answers to that, so I guess I'll just repeat what I said. So the first answer, and it sounds kind of hokey because I teach 10th grade, but my 10th grade English teacher, Mr. Collier, changed my life. And I mean, I tell him this every time I see him, so it's like nothing new. And I saw him at the Dodge Festival a couple weeks ago, and it was really exciting. It was like a love fest. So like, I wrote poems, and he was like, you should submit these poems to the school magazine. And I was like, what's a school magazine? So he got me to join the magazine, and then I had my first poem published, and then eventually I became editor-in-chief, and I was like, wow, like, I get whatever this poetry thing is, and he, like, really changed my life. Then I went off to SUNY Binghamton for college, and, like, the first week of school, I'm like, I'm gonna be an English major, I'm gonna declare my major creative writing, I'm, like, so excited, and they're like, whoa, like, you can't declare anything yet, like, you need to slow down. So I knew instantly that I wanted to study creative writing, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna be a poet, I'm gonna do this. But I would say that I really didn't sort of identify myself as a poet until, like, years later. Like, right out of Binghamton, I went right to Sarah Lawrence and did my MFA in poetry. Even doing that, I still didn't really feel like I was a poet. I just didn't identify that way. I don't know if it was like insecurity, if it was because I wasn't publishing much, like I have no idea. It wasn't really until about 2009 or so where I started taking workshops without like credit or anything at the New School with Patricia Cartland. And I've been in her class for like 9 years now, each semester. And that workshop really just changed me. And it became like a whole community, and I realized how much I love that social aspect of being a writer. And that really formed my identity. And for the first time, and at that time, like my marriage was falling apart, so there was a lot of chaos. And I kind of built this poetry life out of that. So it was the best thing that could have happened to me. And then I started taking my work more seriously, and like sending my work out to journals, and then getting accepted. And that really is what I think got me to seriously consider myself as a poet. Then I started a reading series in New York, and just turned 7 in September, so all those things kind of, solidified that identity. So, that's a long answer, sorry. Yeah.
If you couldn't write poetry, is there another genre you would write, or would you just not write at all?
I mean, I journal a lot, but like, it's not like, Virginia Woolf. Like, none of my insights are all that, insightful. They're never going to be published, though. They're all just like complaining or being happy, because they're highs and lows, right? There's something I want to write, and I've written like a page, literally a page, which I'm like, yes, I got a page now. I was talking earlier about it. I don't really know if it would be YA, or if it would be memoir, or if it would be fiction, but it's basically about like a relationship I had as a teenager. So it's like about the 90s, like Nancy and I were joking, it's like historical fiction because it's the 90s, but like it kind of is. So like, yes, someday I hope to write that book, and I don't know what genre it would fit into, but I'm just not there yet. Like, I'm just not interested in like going through all my diaries and all these letters we have, and like, someday maybe it'll happen, but I don't know. So, yeah.
You said last night that you love to submit, which is something that I hear rarely from poets, and I don't feel that way myself. Will you talk a little bit about that, the love of submitting materials?
Yeah, so again, it's really one of the greatest things that came out of my divorce was that, you know, I was suddenly on my own, and so I made these new rules for myself, and I decided, like, every time I submit I have a new poem, and I'm ready to submit it somewhere, I'm gonna mark it down in the spreadsheet. So I've got this, like, gigantic spreadsheet on Excel, like, it's so fun, and it's huge. And I made this sort of rule that every time I got rejected, I was gonna send something out that night, which is, like, a great rule to have if you could follow it, but I, like, really held myself to it. The problem is you can't do that unless you're also writing a lot, which is why it was great that I'm in this workshop, or have been in this workshop, where I'm writing at least one poem a week, right? Not that it's always ready to send out, but like I'm producing material. So for me, I kind of just look at it like it's a game. And like Submittable, which is like this online program to submit work, for people who don't know, is really easy to sort of look at it like a game. Like, oh, rejected, okay, I gotta submit something else somewhere else. So I kind of just try not to look at it as rejection, because whenever I get rejected, I get hopeful I'm gonna send something else out. So sometimes I send it out to the same journal, sometimes I'll send it somewhere else. So yeah, I mean, I guess it's like mind over matter. Like I'm kind of like, oh, this is fun, I'm just gonna pretend it's like a game and it's not personal, because it's not personal. You know, and it's all a matter of timing, like everything else in life. And so you don't know what an editor's gonna feel like when that submission is open on that day. You don't even know if it's gonna get to the editor, it might get to like, you know, an intern or a student, and so you don't know what's gonna happen. So that's why you can't take it personally, because you're always up against all these other things. So yeah, and I mean, if you don't look at it as fun, then it's like a nightmare. Which some people do. Like I've had friends ask me, like, could you just do this for me? And I'm like, no. Like you have to do it for yourself. But yeah, it's I don't know. It's fun. I think it's fun. But I try not to take it so seriously, even though it's pretty serious. Anything else?
How did you come up with, I've forgotten the title of it, I think it was your Jabberwocky poem.
My Jabberwocky
The one you,
poem.
the one you read with the allogisms in there, the forced swamp.
Oh, the turning over
Yes,
phrases one.
Yes.
What was the question? How did I think about it?
How did you come up with the words and the language?
Oh, I'm really glad you asked that question. Thanks for listening to that. Yeah, so that poem is probably the oldest poem in the book, actually, yeah. That came out of my workshop, which is interesting. I just gave a similar assignment to 7th and 8th graders in this workshop I teach at school. So there were about 6 or 7 words that my teacher, Patricia Carling, gave us, and was like, try to use these 7 words in a poem. Everyone came up with different words, different poems. And people, some of the words like are not even real words, so like you can make them mean whatever you want. So some of the words are like some of the ones you brought up, like felt was one of them, darge was one, firstwinkle or first one of those was one. What was the other one? Kench was one. I mean, kvetching was Yiddish, so that was me. But yeah, I think those were the words. And so it started because of spell check. Like I had typed something, I was writing a poem about like some guy and like his name was not like Michael or something like that. I forgot what his name was. And so I wrote it down. It was like a red squiggle line. Right? Like words and I recognized that name. And I was like, oh, isn't that interesting? Like that's sort of a weird layer to, you know, the 21st century and sort of dating. And then I kind of got that poem out of that. So yeah, the words there are kind of strange and it's interesting. And then the whole salesman thing, I think had to just be in my mind for Mad Men, because that's one of the older poems in the book, and so that's probably when I was writing those Mad Men poems. So, which I didn't read any of tonight, but there's a couple. Yeah, you had a question?
So, you went straight to MFA in poetry from your undergraduate years. Would you do that differently the second time around, or what did you get out of the MFA? And do you have any regrets about it? Do you recommend it?
That's really hard. I don't regret it because I really, so senior year in college, well, not senior year, so sophomore year in college, Liz Rosenberg gave us, had us order Marie Howe's What the Living Do. And like, I was like, oh my God, this is the best book I've ever read, and it like completely changed me. And I totally fell in love with her, and I loved that book, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna, like, I need to study Marie Howe. So she's the reason that I applied to Sarah Lawrence senior year. And I knew I was gonna mostly stay in New York, and so I applied to a bunch of different MFA programs. And it just really felt like if I didn't do it then, I didn't know when I was gonna do it. Plus, like, I'm the first in my family to go to college. My parents, like, had no guidance. Like, they were like, do what you want, but, like, we can't afford this, so, like, you're gonna take out loans, which I'm gonna pay till I'm dead, because I'm still paying those loans off. Not to mention my second degree I did after that. But, so for me, it was kind of like, okay, I'm gonna apply to NYU, I'm gonna apply to the New School, I'm gonna apply to Sarah Lawrence, and I think I applied to UMass Amherst. And I got in or was waitlisted at all those places. And then I got off the waitlist at Sarah Lawrence, and I was like, this is amazing, and I have to go. And so I went. And I don't regret it. I mean, I wish I knew more about like funding. Like I didn't know that. I don't know why I didn't like ask more about like counselors at college. I don't know why I didn't look into any of that. I don't remember. But the only thing I kind of regret is that because I was living at home on Long Island with my parents, and I was commuting to Sarah Lawrence twice a week, and I was working in the city at Oxford University Press 3 times a week, because I got that job, and that was the day I got off the waitlist at Sarah Lawrence, and I was like, I can't work full time here, and they were like, you could be a temp and work part time, and I was like, great, okay. So my really only regret that I have is that I never got to hang out on campus. As soon as I was out of class, I was home or I was going back into the city. And so, like, I just read at the Sarah Lawrence Alumni Festival a couple weeks ago, and I was so excited because I hadn't been back to Sarah Lawrence since I graduated. I didn't know where anyone was. I didn't recognize anybody. Like, I didn't know anyone I graduated with. So I really feel like I missed out on that experience. And on the flip side to that, I kind of gained that experience by taking these classes at the New School that I've been taking, which has been kind of like a bizarre twist of fate. But that's really my one regret, is that I didn't have that kind of a community. Like, I had more of a community of writers in undergrad, and more of it now than, I like now.
Yeah.
And a lot of that came from also starting a reading series. I was like, I never had this community of writers, and I'm like, I'm gonna start a reading series, and then I met more people. So,
Cool.
yeah, I mean, none of my poems from my MFA made it into any of my books. Only a couple of them, I think, got into journals. Again, I don't think I was taking my writing as strongly as I could have, so I don't know. I don't regret it, but it's interesting that I couldn't give myself over to that at that time, if that makes sense.
Any last questions?
So you're such an upbeat person, but many of your poems are so heavy. How is it that you're able to not be miserable outwardly? And do you easily compartmentalize your emotions? Let's get psychological.
Yeah, like, Lynn, that's like the deepest question. I don't know. I mean, that's a good corny answer. I'm just too honest. Like, I try to go to the gym a lot, and so I get a lot of emotion out that way, right? Because, exercise helps you not think of certain things, and it distracts you. But I don't know. I mean, I don't have really happy poems. Like, even the TV-centered poems, like, they're not happy.
Right.
It's very rare to have, I think, a happy poem anyway. I mean, there are people who are great at writing funny poems, and I'm really envious of them. But I don't know. I guess when I sit down to write, I'm just usually serious, like you were saying, Nancy, before. Like, and most of my poems are quite serious, and I think it's because, going back to Sarah Lawrence, and I think this is why I really don't regret it. So at Sarah Lawrence, you have like these conferences with teachers, and you have to schedule them. And I remember one of the times I had my conference with Marie Howe, it was like really intense, and I was kind of intimidated, and she was talking about one of my poems that wasn't working, and she was sort of like, what do you want from your poetry? And I was like, well, I want them to be like your poems. And she was like, and I was young, I was like 21, 22, like I've been right out of college. And she was like, well, what do you mean by that? And I'm like, well, I read your poems and like they make me want to cry. And she was like, well, then you need to start writing poems that make you cry. And I was just like, well, how do I even do that? And so I didn't do it, and I kind of wasn't writing for a long time after I graduated. And I guess that's in my mind now. Like when I sit down, I'm like, if I'm not gonna write a poem that is meaningful to me and is substantial to me, then like why write it? Which is why some of those TV poems are so great. I mean, I think they're great because like, for me, like that TV show is sort of a vehicle to write about something else. Like that Ned Stark poem is about Ned Stark, but it's really about like how much dating sucks, right? And how like a lot of guys are not who they think they are, or don't present themselves to be how they want to be. Even the Khaleesi poems, like she's this amazing symbol of, feminism, and the poems are about that, but like they're also about like being the woman you want to be. So, I don't know. Did I kind of answer that? Thanks.
Well, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Leah has books for sale today for $15. I will be handling sales so that she can talk more if you have questions or if you want to get your book signed, which I'm sure she
I'm
would be
happy
happy
to
to
do
do.
so.
So yeah, talk with the author, eat more cookies, talk to each other, buy books, support the arts. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I recently gave that same assignment to kids, and they came up with amazing culture and everything. Like, I chose to. That's not my assignment. I stole it from my teacher.
So I read all of my fires and once you finish published poet, oh my gosh, I was intimidated.
So,
It's nice to meet you.
any research I've done is about like 80% of the gene systems are in your digestive tract, and so people always associate with probiotics. Like really, like it's like the bacteria to support your immune system. And there's so many different ways that you can get it into your diet other than taking it as pills. Like I'm a huge fan of kombucha. It's
Right. But what about the wings? Cider Z, you know?
it comes in like flavors, and I think
But,
it's
you know,
really,
it's
it's
really
like very effervescent.
on more than one occasion I've seen here.
But it's got a lot of probiotics in it, and anytime I just get a hint of starting to get sick, I
Like short term.
like a liter of it. And that always, that, I mean, other than just past cold, I forgot that usually just like kicks it right out. But yeah, I would say if there's any way she could really use it,
Well, you should talk to. Yeah, well, Nancy
just to
said
kind of
her
like
class is going to a
continually boost your immune system.
Longing to ski, is that?
Yeah, and I've heard Robert talk about that too, so you should check it out. I think it's tonight. Yeah, I haven't been doing that, I think like, I'm just like really low energy thing.
Yeah.
Because it's like, sure, what's gonna inspire you, being in that kind of
Anticipatory.
Yes. Expect an ice storm.
And it's a bike and bar
Sometimes
show,
turn
so.
I never thought that'd be
Between
nice.
school and work and
I just hope the Jamie goes and
I just need to put everybody else in your
Yeah, but in reality,
I totally understand where it's like, I literally just don't have time to eat properly.
I would take care. I would put my bank account up there and like 90% fresh transactions for
Oh no.
Yeah.
Like,
March is
like,
horrible like that.
Because it's
yeah, it is. Like I said, like I try to
but sleep is huge and it's hard like when you're sick. And it was you should be sleeping a lot, but like in terms of reading, you're told
My late 20s.
I was